Welcome back to Cannabis Coast to Coast News. This is the final section or the C block of our weekly news show. I'm Alaina Pinto. One more reminder to download the PCMTV app available on Google Play and the App Store. Not only can you get access to our documentation of the fight to end cannabis prohibition, but you can also get the live stream every Monday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. First up in this final section is the Virginia Report with Joe Parsons.
I'm Joe Parsons with the Virginia Cannabis Connection and Higher Education's Coffee Talk, sponsored by 97.5 3WV, reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. In a repeat of last year, another one of Virginia's cannabis bills has made it through the House and will be sent to the governor's desk. And hopefully this time it won't be another missed opportunity for justice. House Bill 2555 would create a process for sentence modifications and would allow incarcerated individuals and those under state supervision that are eligible for cannabis-related offenses to petition for relief. Of course, these offenses cannot involve firearms and must be nonviolent to qualify. Last year, the governor vetoed a similar bill that denied relief to over 1,800 men and women that are unfortunately still paying a price for laws that have since changed. He cited that the bill would undermine the legal system and the judges that felt that the sentences were necessary at the time of sentencing. While the governor's position on this issue has not changed, the support for this bill has since grown in popularity, especially since Maryland and other states have enacted similar measures. Recent polling indicates that 84% of registered voters support the release of incarcerated people serving sentences for crimes that include activity that is now legal. Another survey found that 72% of voters approved former President Biden's pardons of nonviolent cannabis offenders, including, get this, 55% of Republicans. So the question remains, will these new numbers and increased support for this measure, along with pressures of the gubernatorial election coming up in November, now might be a good time for Governor Youngkin to start winning the support of his constituents that have shown the bipartisan support for this bill and the adult retail cannabis bills to become law. Now, one way you can help is to get involved by contacting the Last Prisoner Project. Their work has been leading the way to get justice for individuals who have been negatively affected by the failed war on drugs. They can always use volunteers or donations to continue their mission to free everyone that is being jailed for simple cannabis offenses. You can contact them by going to thelastprisonerproject.org. Well, that's going to do it for this week from Higher Education's Coffee Talk, sponsored by 97.5 3WV in Charlottesville, and reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm Joe Parsons. Until next time, stay lifted.
One of the most controversial executive orders that President Trump has introduced in his first 100 days in office are the cuts made to the federal workforce and the budget cuts to medical cannabis research that scientists and academics are already in the middle of. According to a report by MJ Biz Daily, there are currently 565 ongoing research studies on the long-term effects of cannabis on the brain in adults and in children. The National Institute of Health has seen their anticipated funding frozen by the president's executive order and will use the courts and legal system to loosen that freeze. According to an NIH database in 2012, the year that voters approved adult use laws in Colorado and in Washington state, researchers published around 1,200 cannabis-related studies, mostly focused on the harms of the plant medicine. By 2021, the NIH published more than 4,200 cannabis-related research projects to not only look into the harms of cannabis, but also research the overwhelming anecdotal evidence of the potential benefits of the medicine. Many of the academics who are in danger of losing their staffs and their funds did file a lawsuit to stop the freeze. After reviewing the complaint, federal judge Adam Abelson cited some freedom of speech issues in the executive orders that these cuts are, quote, arbitrary and discriminatory enforcement over billions of dollars in government spending could result in irreparable harm. He also added, quote, that is textbook viewpoint-based discrimination, unquote. This is the new reality that is facing the industry that is already a house of straws that could collapse at any moment. Even research into the hemp industry is in danger, where the U.S. Department of Agriculture already has close to 40 ongoing research projects that will be discontinued. Is there anything happening in any state that's positive? Tell us, send us a message. We want to know. There is a glimmer of hope in the report that total sales revenue in the sale of cannabis continues to grow. And now analysts are forecasting sales revenue reaching $45.35 billion this year alone. Our Maryland correspondent, Christopher Bright, sees a glimmer of hope in his state that might actually give a tax break to some operators.
Welcome to Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm Christopher Bright from the Enlightened Voice, bringing you this week's top cannabis headlines from Maryland. The Maryland House Ways and Means Committee has just given the green light to House Bill 619, a measure that could lighten the tax load for cannabis businesses. Approved last week, this bill expands an existing tax break exempting sales between licensed cannabis companies and registered cannabis nurseries from the state's sale and use tax. Right now, medical marijuana and some business-to-business sales dodge that tax, but come July 1st, 2025, nurseries could join the party if this passes into law. Supporters say it's a win-win. Lower costs for growers and retailers mean a stronger, more sustainable cannabis market, plus it might encourage more nurseries to register, boosting the supply of top-notch strains and spicing up competition. In Maryland's cannabis scene, it's already booming. Since recreational cannabis launched in July 2023, thanks to voters saying yes back in 2024, the state's raked in $94 million in sales just this January, pushing the all-time total to nearly $1.8 billion. This bill's now headed for the full House for a vote, and folks in the industry are watching closely. And now we introduce our content creators of the week. I would like to shine a light on the incredible team at Get to the Joint. Their podcast offers a vibrant perspective on the latest cannabis trends, innovative products, and the camaraderie of friends discussing the Maryland cannabis scene. Everyone should take a moment and get to the joint. Be sure to subscribe and let them know that the Enlightened Voice sent you. And this has been this week's Maryland Cannabis Report. I'm Christopher Bright from the Enlightened Voice, reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
There is one multi-state operator that continues to grow profits as well as the cannabis sativa plant. It's Florida-based Trulieve, with over 200 dispensaries nationwide. A fourth quarter report was positive, which is still rare in the biggest companies in the industry. As you might expect, their stock rose too. And when it comes to the stock market, our Doug Miller continues to be high on Wall Street, and in this case, Trulieve. Here's Doug.
I'm Doug Miller from High on Wall Street with this week's Cannabis Stock Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Trulieve Cannabis Corp. Co-founder James Purnell has been appointed president of the Florida-based marijuana MSO. Purnell, who co-founded Trulieve with CEO Kim Rivers in 2015, has more than 20 years of experience as an entrepreneur and cannabis operator. Trulieve reported fourth quarter revenue of $301 million, a year-over-year increase of 5%, according to the company's February 27th quarterly report. Their annual revenue was up 5% to $1.2 billion. And among other developments noted in Trulieve's quarter report, the company launched Onward, a non-alcoholic THC-infused beverage, opened 33 stores in 2024, increasing its retail footprint to 225 locations nationwide, and it began adult use sales at 3 Ohio locations. So let's see how the stock chart looks. It's trading around $4.25, and it's been down with the rest of the market. So I would expect it to set back up. So be sure to trade smart and lock in those profits. And that's this week's Cannabis Stock Report. Reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News, I'm Doug Miller.
If you think your state is dragging its feet to launch a medical program or an adult use market, think about the state of Alabama. In 2021, that state decriminalized the plant medicine, and 4 years later, still has not opened up one dispensary. There have been lawsuits, changes in the regulations, and over $8 million has been spent during these delays. Another example of state governments having no clue on how to launch a medical marijuana program, let alone adult use. One area of the United States that continues to embrace the revenue generated from their state's market is Nevada. This week, Tina Tasaka reports from the Arizona Cannabis Music Awards and has an update on the tribal nation's effort to operate a successful adult use business there. Here's Tina.
Good evening. I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies, and I'm doing a little road show. I'm covering the Arizona Cannabis Music Awards Festival. This is the Nevada and Tribal Nations Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Nevada's illicit cannabis market, which I reported on last week, has grown to a $242 million industry, reducing the state's tax revenue from legal sales. The Cannabis Compliance Board, CCB, reported a decline in taxable cannabis sales from $965 million in 2022 to $829 million in 2024, with tax revenue for schools dropping by $32 million. Lawmakers voiced concerns about illegal sales, with Senator John Steinbeck calling it out of control. CCB officials noted illegal deliveries, high-potency hemp products, and unregulated sales in smoke shops and gas stations. While some lawmakers, like Senator Fabian Denote, proposed expanding legal sales through restaurants, spas, and events, current laws limit cannabis sales to licensed dispensaries and lounges. Some areas that can enhance efforts, events. Some lawmakers see potentials in legalizing cannabis sales at large events like the Electric Daisy Carnival, but this would require new legislation and licensing changes. This past Thursday, February 27th, the Indigenous Cannabis Industry Association and the Socalgon Mole Lake Tribe hosted the Wisconsin Cannabis and Hemp Industry and Policy Summit. Exciting developments unfolded at the summit, where cannabis leaders, experts, and advocates are shaping the future of the industry. Key topics included Wisconsin's proposed medicinal cannabis bill, federal legislation, and the economic and health benefits of legalization. Tribal leaders discussed sovereignty as a tool for growth, and top-notch panel discussions were filled with industry subject matter experts to discuss cannabis and hemp innovations. With policymakers, farmers, and industry forward thinkers in one space, the summit is a movement toward a sustainable and inclusive future for Wisconsin and surrounding states. That's it for the Nevada highlights and tribal nations. I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies and Cannabis Coast to Coast News. And we are still here at the Arizona Cannabis Music Festival Awards.
The state of Missouri's cannabis market continues to operate in the black, and one of the reasons for that is a much more lenient set of regulations on cannabis social clubs that are open now without any controversy or public safety issues. They also have a vibrant event calendar of one-day cannabis-friendly events. And this week, our man in Missouri, Brandon Jones, tracked down a state lobbyist. Here's his report.
Hi, everybody. I'm Brandon Jones with B Green Distribution with Missouri Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. And you know, we've been watching closely the bills that have been going on here in the state of Missouri, and we're very lucky to be joined by lobbyist Eapen Thampey. Eapen, how are you doing today?
Pretty good, man. I'm actually on the Kansas side of the border this afternoon, is helping the good folks in Kansas out on their cannabis and hemp legislation. So,
well, I just, first of all, want to say thank you very much for being there in the actual courtrooms, doing the groundwork, and being an advocate for us that are trying to get cannabis here for all the medical patients. And, you know, if you could just kind of tell everybody what's kind of going on here in the state of Missouri and bring us kind of up to speed for those across the country.
yeah, absolutely. So here in Missouri, we're kind of in a little bit of a war between the marijuana industry, which is kind of a regulated monopoly. We got license caps on the marijuana licenses in Missouri, so you can't enter. There's a small number of companies that control the market. And the hemp side. So I work with American Shaman here in Kansas City and some other companies around the state. And hemp, we're seeing an explosion in the THCA flower market. We're seeing the pervasive distribution of 5 milligrams or lower dose hemp-derived THC beverages. We're seeing a lot of presence in the market, especially in the C-store, smoke shop. Even in grocery stores these days.
I
So
can say even Total Wine in Kansas picked up Cheech and Chong's drink as well, correct?
yeah, American Shaman works with Cheech and Chong. So I've been fortunate to be on the phone with them not too long ago. But yeah, so here in Missouri, we have kind of 2 or 3 different bills that would aim to regulate in various facets the hemp industry. The marijuana industry has a bill in the House and the Senate that would basically ban. They call it intoxicating hemp. So I don't like that terminology, but let's just roll with it. The marijuana industry has legislation to ban intoxicating hemp from outside of the marijuana dispensaries. We're obviously fighting that. And then there's 2 different versions of legislation that would protect the hemp industry and regulate us and give us some consumer safety and testing standards and make sure packaging isn't attractive to kids and so forth. So we're working on that. We're about 2 weeks away from the midpoint in the Missouri legislative session. So getting anything done this year is getting close to the limit of when it can, how the timeline feasibly works. So we're trying to get something good out of this legislative session. We've got once we come back from spring break on I want to say 4th week of March, we have 8 weeks left. Our legislative session goes through May I want to say 17. So that's kind of the timetable.
Well, thank you again for joining us. Thank you for what you do every day. And like you said, you are in Kansas right now and coming back to Missouri. There's a great thing that you're taking care of both states and making sure that patients have access. So thanks again. I'm Brandon Jones with B Green Distribution. This is the Cannabis Coast to Coast News, and this is our Missouri Report. Have a great week. Stay medicated and educated. Thanks, Eapen.
And finally, does frequent use of adult use cannabis cause cavities? Another research study reports that the answer is yes. In an article published in January of this year, the American Dental Association used a cross-sectional survey of the research results from a self-reported survey of over 5,600 adults between the years of 2015 and 2018. That survey was done 10 years ago by the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. Their results claim that frequent recreational cannabis users have a 17% higher probability of an increase in cavities, and a 55% have a higher chance of untreated root surface issues, and 41% higher odds of having severe tooth loss. So if you use cannabis once a month, you qualify as a frequent cannabis user, and you better take care of your teeth. So don't fall asleep before you go brush. Okay, but keep in mind that original self-reported data was collected over 10 years ago and did not include medical patients. So it's just another example of this new wave of propaganda backed by the substance abuse community and the return of prohibition spin by the medical and political community. Such is the state of this industry in 2025. Not a lot of positive momentum going on in the first 2 months of the year, but supporters and lobbyists will have to become even more dedicated to the cause, especially over the next 4 years. Okay. That's this week's Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm Alaina Pinto. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Consume responsibly and brush your teeth. We'll see you next week.
I think I messed up. Did you know there's a place that covers all the cannabis news you need? Welcome to Pro Cannabis Media, your go-to for all things cannabis. PCM is the CNBC of weed, bringing you the latest news and talk shows with a twist. We've got 16 state correspondents and multimedia journalists from around the US and Canada.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones with Big Green Distribution with the Missouri Cannabis Report.
I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report.
I'm Amy Carter from Michigan Weedsters.
Andrew Behringer here reporting from Washington, D.C.
Debbie Fazy with the Canadian Toke of the Week.
It all started back in 2018 when founder Jimmy Young kicked off the In the Weeds podcast. His mission? Documenting the fight to end cannabis prohibition. Fast forward to today and we've got Cannabis Coast to Coast with Alaina Pinto, delivering the nation's only TV-style cannabis news show.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Cannabis Coast to Coast, PCM TV's weekly roundup of industry news from California to New York. I'm Alaina Pinto.
As of August 2024, PCM has racked up over 1.2 million views and 14.5 million impressions on our YouTube channel. With 15,000 subscribers and growing, our reach is spreading like wildfire. PCM's website, YouTube, Rumble, Discord, Roku, Twitch, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and even our very own PCM TV app. Get your cannabis news fix with Pro Cannabis Media. We're here to keep you informed and entertained. Stay tuned and stay lifted.